Many years ago, a family approached my pastor in search of a responsible and dependable teenager to occasionally watch over their 3 children. My pastor gave the mother my number, and that Friday evening, she picked me up to babysit. While giving me the rundown of the kids' routines, the mom stressed that the kids were, under no circumstances, not allowed any drinks. She explained that they wet their beds, so she restricted their fluid intake. Once the parents left, I started to try to play with the kids. There was an 8-year-old boy, a 7-year-old girl, and a 3-year-old boy. I say that I tried to play with them because these kids didn't seem to know how to play. They just stared at me with almost soulless eyes, their expressions blank and devoid of any emotion. The kids didn't play. They didn't smile. They just stared at me. I took my job seriously, and I worked hard to try to break through, but they remained quiet until the little girl whispered, "Can we live with you?" I smiled awkwardly, unsure of what she meant by that. Up until that question, I had gotten nothing from these kids. No response, no reaction. I managed my way through the evening reading books to them, trying to draw them out with silly songs and modeling play with the few toys they had. As the evening progressed and it was nearing bedtime, the little girl spoke again. "We have to take a bath," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I shrugged and started to fill the tub. To my shock, as soon as the water was deep enough, the 3 children immediately climbed into the tub and began to drink the water greedily, as if they were parched and in desperate need of hydration. Their small hands cupped to their mouths as they consumed the soapy liquid. I quickly tried to intervene, attempting to stop them from drinking the dirty bath water, but they were relentless. They seemed almost panicked, as if they were afraid that the water would be taken away from them. I struggled to remove the children from the tub and drain the water, but they were determined to continue drinking. I was outnumbered. I somehow managed to take all 3 of them out of the tub. While pulling out the drain plug in the tub, I looked back. To my horror, the little girl was sucking on a soaked washcloth. As I turned to take the washcloth, another jumped back into the tub and started drinking the draining water. I had never witnessed such behavior before, and I couldn't understand what was driving these children to act in such a way. I didn't know what in the world, but these kids' behavior was off. Feeling overwhelmed and unsure of how to respond, I turned to the children and tried to reason with them. "Hey guys, hang on," I said, trying to keep my tone calm and gentle. "Bathwater isn't for drinking. Let's go into the kitchen and get some milk." But the reaction was not what I expected. Their eyes, which had been dull and expressionless throughout the evening, widened in fear. "No, we can't," one of them whispered. "We'll get beat." It was then that the little girl spoke up again, her voice trembling. "Can we live with you?" she asked, looking up at me with pleading eyes. "My baby brother got to go live with another family, and we want to leave too." In that moment, the weight of the children's situation hit me with full force. These children were suffering, and they were reaching out to me for help. It broke my heart, but I explained to her that I'm just a kid too, only 14. I couldn't take them. Feeling deeply uneasy, I put the kids to bed and called my mom because I had such a bad feeling about this family. Unfortunately, my mom and dad were out too. This was before cell phones, so all I could do was wait for the kids' parents to get home. When the parents arrived, the mom rushed by me and said her husband would take me home. His eyes were red and sleepy looking. I felt so uncomfortable. I was grateful that it was a short drive to my house. The next day, my mom said I needed to call and make a report to Child Protective Services. When I called, they thanked me for making the report and told me the family was already in their system and that they'd follow up. I had always been responsible and mature for my age, so when I turned 13, I decided to take on the responsibility of babysitting. I was excited at the prospect of having my own income to spend however I wanted. I was obsessed with Fall Out Boy and their music and wanted to buy all of their CDs and merchandise. But I didn't have much money, so I saw babysitting as an opportunity to save up for those items. I remember babysitting for a family that had a 9-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. The parents seemed alright, although a bit grumpy. They provided me with a strict schedule and made joking threats about punishing any boys who might come to visit while they were away. As soon as the parents left, the little girl began singing in an eerie, high-pitched voice. "We're all alone now." It was a strange moment, and it felt like something out of a horror movie. "I know," the little boy chimed in. "Let's play rape," which startled me. In retrospect, I understand that the child probably heard the term on TV and knew it was a shocking word and said it just to get a reaction. I totally bought into it at the time, sputtering wide-eyed, and quickly changed the subject, trying to move on from the uncomfortable situation. Taking care of these kids turned out to be quite a challenge. The first hour was especially difficult as they were constantly pushing boundaries and testing my limits. One of the main issues was their insistence on watching the show South Park. I knew their parents would not approve of this, so I had to be firm in my decision not to let them watch it. As soon as I said no, the little girl said casually, "Oh, that's fine. We'll just go play PlayStation in the family room. Feel free to watch it out here." The comment caught me off guard and I was unsure how to react. I knew that I had to be firm, but also understanding. I tried to explain to them why they couldn't watch that particular show. I suggested that they could watch any other TV show in the living room while I prepared dinner for them. The parents had left instructions to make them sandwiches, which I thought was something I could handle with ease. However, before I had even taken out the bread, I heard a loud and sudden crash. I immediately knew what had happened. The little girl had broken a glass. I couldn't help but feel frustrated and disappointed, but I knew there was no way to punish her. So I cleaned up the broken glass while these two incredibly weird kids watched with wide eyes as they were observing a strange and fascinating spectacle. After dumping the broken glass in the trash, I returned to the task of making sandwiches for the kids. Being a vegetarian, I had made a simple salad sandwich for myself, while the kids had chicken sandwiches. Just as I was finishing up, the little boy suddenly let out a loud scream, which even for my hypervigilant state as an accountable teenage babysitter, sounded to me like an exaggerated pantomime of pain. Despite my initial skepticism, I quickly rushed over to the couch in the living room where he was sitting to check on him. He was crying out, "My ankle! My ankle!" and dramatically flopping back into the couch. As I tried to understand what had happened to his ankle, I noticed that the little girl had slipped out of the room. Although I was aware of this, I didn't pay much attention as I was focused on trying to figure out how the little boy had hurt his ankle. He kept repeating, "I went to stand, but it hurt too much. I don't know," over and over again. However, as I continued to assess his ankle, I suddenly noticed that his eyes flicked just behind me, where I saw the little girl standing with a disturbing smile on her face. Then all of a sudden, he was miraculously healed. Yeah, praise the Lord. By this point, I couldn't help but think that these kids were not only strange, but also had an excessive desire for attention and probably needed more involvement from their parents. But I was just 13, and the $60 that I would earn for babysitting for 4 hours was all that mattered to me at that very moment. I placed the sandwiches on the dining table for the kids to eat, went to get us some soda, and returned to the dining room. As I poured soda for both of them, I noticed that they hadn't even taken a bite of their sandwiches yet. I asked them what they were waiting for. To my surprise, they both smiled and said, "For you to take a bite of yours." It was a bizarre request, and I couldn't understand why they would want me to take a bite of my sandwich before they even touched theirs. I felt uneasy and unsure of how to respond to this strange request. I picked up my sandwich, but as I was going to take a bite, I started feeling something was not quite right. I am grateful that I followed my intuition and decided to open the top part of the bread of my sandwich because when I did, I saw glass. Broken glass. Broken glass that I had put in the trash just moments before. I was horrified as I stared at the two little kids sitting across from me who were now wearing menacing twin grins. I couldn't believe what had just happened, and I lost my cool, shouting, "Are you serious? At the very least, you could have really injured my mouth. What's wrong with you two?" Instead of crying, apologizing, or even pretending to be ashamed or confused, these two kids began laughing. It wasn't typical childlike laughter. It was low, sinister, and threatening. It was a laughter that I had never heard from children before, and it sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake off the feeling that these kids were too young to be laughing in such a way. I was so shaken that I called my older sister, who was 17 at the time, and I cried to her about what had happened. She came to take over for me, and we left the house feeling uneasy and chilled. I never babysat for those two children again. What I couldn't understand was the level of planning and intentionality that went into putting the broken glass in my sandwich, and the completely remorseless way in which they responded to my reaction. They were unlike any children that I'd ever met before, and I couldn't help but feel disturbed by their behavior. 20 years have passed since the time this happened, but the memories of that night still remain fresh in my mind. I was just 14 years old. My best friend at the time had an older sister who shared a house with her roommate, who had a baby daughter. The house was situated in the suburbs, surrounded by lush green trees and the peaceful sound of chirping birds. The atmosphere was tranquil, and it was the perfect setting for a summer night. Recently, the roommate had gone through a breakup, and the baby's daddy had been kicked out of the house. She was feeling a bit down and wanted to have a good time, so she and my friend's older sister decided to go out for the night. They asked us if we wanted to watch the baby for the night, and we jumped at the opportunity. We were thrilled at the prospect of getting to spend the night in their house and have the place to ourselves. As soon as they left, we made ourselves comfortable and began to explore the house. We raided the fridge, snacking on whatever we could find. We watched R-rated movies that we weren't allowed to watch at home. We even painted our nails in bright, bold colors. It was a night of freedom and fun, and we relished every moment of it. So we get the baby to bed, watching a scary movie in the front room, painting nails and eating junk food. Then we start hearing this scratching noise, along with other strange grumblings. It gets louder. Finally, we stop the movie and figure out it's coming from the front door. We slowly walk over. Then we hear a fist slamming against the door, and we jump back. Then, we hear the scratching again. We walk up to the door. Then my best friend looks through the little window at the top and swears. She's getting pale. I look through the window and see this disheveled white dude trying to get the door open. He was obviously drunk, talking to himself, and it was his big-ass thing of keys scratching against the door. But the door would not budge, and we were trapped inside. As I leaned back, my friend's expression changed to one of panic. She did that loud whisper thing a terrified person does and said, "That's the roommate's baby's daddy." I must have looked confused because she quickly added, her voice shaking with fear, "Roommate has a restraining order against him. He beat the shit out of her while she was holding the baby. Older sister called the police on him. He was in jail for a while. They changed the locks, and roommate got the restraining order against him. He must have just got bailed out." I had been told nothing of the previous history of violence before agreeing to come and babysit. I had thought it would be a simple sleepover, watching a movie and playing with a cute baby. But now, I was caught up in the middle of a dangerous situation, feeling like a character in a twisted Lifetime movie about domestic violence. Suddenly, the baby's daddy's voice bellowed through the door. "I can hear you talking through the door. I'm going to fucking kill you both." He slammed his fist against the door again, causing my best friend to freeze in fear. But something within me snapped, and I knew I had to act fast. I ran to the other room and grabbed the phone, dialing 911. My mind was in a blur as the adrenaline rushed through my body. But thankfully, the 911 operator was calm and helpful. I didn't know the address of the house we were in, but my friend was able to snap out of her shock and provide the information. According to my friend, while I was on the phone, he was yelling out a stream of abuses the entire time and said roommate was going to regret this. Thankfully, as soon as the sirens were heard, the guy stopped. The cops showed up, calmed us down, and took our statements. The thing that made it more terrifying was I later found out a neighbor saw the guy drunk and yelling. The neighbor watched him screaming, punching at the house, then go back to his car, yelling abuses the entire time, and attempt to retrieve something from the trunk. However, it was too dark for him to see, but it was heavy and long. He was about to pull it out when the sirens came and spooked him away. From then on, I would always find out if there were any domestic issues before I babysat for anyone.